Hi, welcome to today's Rapid Resilience Briefing. My name is Sean McDevitt. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Everbridge, and I'm joined by Adam DeLuca, our Director of Risk Intelligence, and Josh Strongin, our Manager of Risk Intelligence. Thank you both for joining me today.
Hey, Sean.
So we are going to be discussing the upcoming inauguration in just a few weeks, what we're expecting to see, what we saw in 2017. Obviously, there were some protests and some events surrounding the inauguration that caused some disruptions. And I think we're probably expecting to see something similar in just a few weeks. So, Adam, I wanted to start with you because of your background. Kind of what did we see in 2017 and kind of what were some of the surrounding events that impacted operations and organizations in and around the DC area?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So it's for those that don't know, I worked at the Washington D.C. Police Department, the Metropolitan Police Department, for a number of years. And during Trump's first inauguration, I was the operations manager at the Joint Operating Command Center, which is the center at the police department where all the law enforcement agencies come to kind of share intelligence and share operating cadence, during major events. So I was there to kind of coordinate intelligence, coordinate with officers on the ground and work with these other law enforcement agencies to make sure that we're sharing information on the situation. So 2017, there were a lot of planned protests surrounding inauguration. We would know about those, but then there were the ones kind of planned by groups like Antifa or Disrupt J20, which are some of these more anarchist groups that you can get some indications on what they're doing, but the exact numbers, the locations are a little more vague. So that's important to remember. It's also important to remember that January 20th isn't just inauguration day. The week is inauguration week. The weeks afterwards are related to inauguration, not just in Washington, D.C., but nationwide. In D.C., we saw a lot of conflicts with protesters, police, as well as supporters of President Trump in the lead up to inauguration and afterwards. Specifically, there was an event at the National Press Building called the Deplorable the night before inauguration, where we saw protesters throwing objects at attendees in a clash with police that spilled not just at that location, but in other places downtown.
Okay, so, Adam, in terms of disruptions to organizations, were there specific things that we saw in the DC metro area? Are we expecting to see those again? Are there planned protest routes? Has any of that been an indication?
Yeah, so obviously there are planned protests. I'm going to let Josh talk about some of the events and maybe mitigation strategies in a little bit. But in 2017, the day of inauguration, the pretty much the entire downtown of Washington, D.C. was affected by protests, clashes with police. The one group specifically, Disrupt J20, used some traditional anarchist playbook tactics and procedures to evade police detection and avoid capture, which is black bloc tactics, where everybody dresses in black, covers their face in black. And so it makes it very difficult for people to identify who's actually doing what. I was there that day. I watched the group move south on 13th Street toward downtown. It could have been in the thousands. They were smashing windows, cars. They were doing physical confrontations with anybody displaying any Donald Trump paraphernalia. So that's something else that if you're in the area on January 20th and you want to attend the event, there could be people harassing people just for wearing Donald Trump paraphernalia, which is unfortunate. That's something else that you kind of have to talk about. We're not a political organization here, right? But the Trump presidency, the first one, and we can expect this one as well, is a trigger for extremist behavior on both sides. Okay, and especially now, it's very topical with the Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas. And as well as the situation down in New Orleans. The Department of Homeland Security is very concerned about domestic violent extremism and the likelihood of violence motivated by these global events, and Trump's inauguration is one of those.
I'm glad you kind of read my mind, Adam. I wanted to make sure that we talked about kind of those recent events in Vegas and in New Orleans. I'm sure that is bringing everything kind of to a heightened state in terms of, some of the concerns that we're seeing across the space. So, Josh, I am going to come over to you. I do want to kind of talk about what we're expecting to see with the upcoming inauguration, if there are plans, if there are protests that are out there. I know that we probably can't speak to some of the domestic extremism stuff that we, are probably going to see bubble up. But what are the plans that we've seen come about?
Yeah, sure thing, Sean. So the biggest thing is there's a planned protest the weekend before inauguration on January 18th, called the People's March. And this has been organized by the same group that organized the Women's March protests that began
Hmm.
in 2017 in response to Trump's election. And those took off then right after the inauguration and involved, several million people. These protests, currently, there's a large one expected in DC on that Saturday. The organizers are expecting around 50,000 people right now. It kind of remains to be seen how large it will be. Now, their protests in the past have been pretty peaceful, with the biggest disruptions just being road closures involved with their march pattern. This group's expected to be on the mall, where you have a permit, and so there'll be a police presence there as well. And the biggest risk will be if there are Trump supporters that come to clash or counter protests or anything like that. But other than that, the most significant disruption there will likely be road closures, and it will be possible for protests to pop up around this event in other cities on January 18th as well. Now, in terms of Inauguration Day, obviously the big thing is that DC is largely shut down, especially after what took place in 2021. The city was basically locked down after the January 6th attack that year. This year, we can expect somewhat similar a security status. The mall will be completely shut down. All those roads will be closed. Metro stations within that area will be closed for the public. So it'll be a lot of walking. And, there will be the potential for protests, like Adam mentioned. Those plans are not going to be necessarily publicized either now or even in the lead up to the inauguration, but there are definitely potential for protest activity. And there will also be potential for protest activity the day before the inauguration on January 19th. Trump is tentatively planning to hold a rally at Capital One Arena in the Chinatown neighborhood of DC as well. And so that could also spawn some protest activity. And there will probably be an increased risk of clashes for that event, just because of the amount of Trump supporters that will obviously also be there as well.
Okay, that's great info, and I'm glad you mentioned the women's protest back in 2017 and how that kind of actually filtered out into other cities around the country as well. Because this isn't just a DC type of thing, right? We're expecting to see other planned protests, other disruptions in other cities. So I think that organizations, even if you're not necessarily located in DC or have offices in DC, you need to be aware of some of the things that might be happening near you. Now, Josh, one last piece before we break. You and I had been talking about how we're kind of still waiting on some information from DC police and kind of event planners in terms of what we're expecting to on Inauguration Day. Can you kind of talk to us about some of those pieces that are still out there waiting to be confirmed?
Sure, yeah. So the big thing obviously is road closures in DC, and for organizations with offices or people in DC, they can expect for the majority of the city, especially the downtown National Mall area, to be basically closed to cars, vehicles of any kind. And there will also be security checkpoints along the mall for people who are attending the inauguration. And again, like I mentioned earlier, they will also close those specific metro stations as well. So it'll be pretty locked down in terms of transportation disruptions in the downtown National Mall area of DC. Now, there's more specific road closures that will also occur in addition. We kind of wait to be seen until Secret Service and DC kind of release those. But Everbridge will be releasing a situation report on the inauguration in the coming days, and we will continue to obviously monitor the situation and issue additional reports or VCC layers or whatever is needed as more information is made available as well.
No, that's perfect, Josh, and thank you for highlighting that. So we will make sure that we issue the situation report, put that both in VCC and Dependo, as well as obviously it'll be located in the geolocation will be in DC, but we'll also go ahead and put it on our LinkedIn pages for all of you that want access to it. We'll also be updating tactical resolution letters for DC as well that'll highlight some of those road closures, where some of those planned protests are going to be happening. So make sure that you're keeping an eye out for those things if you're expecting any type of disruptions near your organization. So again, I want to thank you both, Josh and Adam, for joining me today. This is some very valuable information that we're sharing with everyone. So thank you again for your time.
If I can,
Yeah,
Sean,
absolutely. Yeah.
before we wrap, just to kind of highlight something that Josh said is that, we're talking a lot about Washington, D.C., okay? But like we need to remember that we're expecting disruptions nationwide and maybe worldwide. Last time during Trump's inauguration and leading up to it and afterwards, there are many protests in cities across Europe and across the world. So please monitor your local law enforcement for what those disruptions might look like. Surrounding inauguration, there were, targeting executives who were viewed as Trump supporters. Last time in 2017, there were a lot of protests at Uber headquarters. There were airports that were protesting and shutting down, striking, bodegas in New York, but the airports specifically regarding Trump's immigration policy. So there could be a lot of fallout from something like that, especially down in Palm Beach or the Mar-a-Lago area. We saw a lot of protest activity and clashes with law enforcement there as well. So, for mitigation, some strategies around that. Like Josh said, you want to avoid protest groups, especially those displaying those black bloc tactics. You do not want to be caught in a confrontation there. If you are going to go and support President Trump, you need to be aware of your surroundings, because last inauguration, there were targeting of people that were viewed as President Trump supporters. So, just a couple things there in terms of how you can keep yourself safe in some of these large crowds when you're just looking to attend an inauguration, because a lot of these events also spilled out through some of the, not just in the downtown area. There were clashes with police in some of the more residential areas in Washington, D.C. as well. So just something to keep an eye out if you're out and about on January 20th and the surrounding days.
No, that's perfect context, Adam. Thank you. Yeah, and it's not just about keeping organizations running, right? It's about helping make sure that people stay safe. So thank you for kind of pointing that out as well. So again, I want to thank you, Adam and Josh, for your participation today, and we will continue to keep everyone updated if there are any developing situations. So again, thank you, Adam and Josh, and thank you everyone for joining our Rapid Resilience briefing today.